Call our meeting to order. First item we have today is request for bill introductions. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill dealing with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. It is RS 0928.
You make a motion?
And I move its introduction.
Second. Senator Hawk.
Yeah. Discussion.
Discussion, yes.
Is there a
Senator
topic?
McGinn.
I'm sorry, Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. It deals with moving the officers from Capers to the Kansas Police and Fire.
Okay, thank you.
We have a second by Senator Hawk. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's accepted. Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill introduction, RS 1068, and it's by utilizing pipeline for CO2 transfer. I so move.
Second by Senator Petty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Bill's accepted. Okay. Next item we have is subcommittee, pardon me? Senator Petty? Oh, sorry.
Okay. It's RS 1140. It's updating definitions for Kansas Telemedicine Act.
Motion?
Make a motion.
Second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passed. Okay, we'll move on to our subcommittee reports. First item we have is the corrections and public safety. We'll start out with the Emergency Medical Services Board. The agency requests a revised estimate totaling $2.6 million, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $16,332 below the amount approved by the 2020 legislature. Primary decrease occurs in contractual services for lower than anticipated expenditures, primarily for travel and computer programming, partial offset by increases to salaries, wages, and commodities expenditures. And they have 14 FTE positions. The governor concurred with the agency's revised estimates, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation. Any questions on 21? Moving on to 22. Agency request operating expenditures totaling $2.5 million, all from special revenue funds. The request is a decrease $73,150 below the agency's 2021 revised estimate. The decrease is primarily attributed to the reduced expenditures associated with the anticipated cases completion and a one-time expenditure for equipment budgeted for fiscal 2021. The request included 14 FTEs. The governor concurred with the agency, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation. Questions on 22? Okay, we'll move on to State Fire Marshal. The agency revised estimate totaling $6.3 million, all from special revenue funds. It's the same amount approved for 2020. The revised estimate includes 69.8 FTE positions, which is an increase of 3 FTEs positions. The increase reflects hiring of 2 FTE positions and a temporary internship for the 1 FTE position. The governor recommended expenditures totaling $6.4 million, all from special revenue funds. The recommendation is an increase of $49,373. The increase is due to the governor's recommendation of adding the $49,373 from the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund for operating expenditures and projects related to the COVID-19 pandemic in fiscal 2021. These CRF funds include salaries and wages of $1,950, contractual services $34,575, and commodities of $12,848, and projected expenditures to address security incidents $35,000, personal protective equipment $10,000, and video conferencing equipment $4,373. The subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommendation. Questions on 21? Seeing none, we'll move on to 2022. Governor recommended expenditures totaling $6.4 million, all from special revenue funds. Recommendation is an increase of $56,740 above the 21 recommendation. It's a decrease of $501,523 below the agency's fiscal year 22 request. The decrease is due to the governor's recommending partial funding for the agency's 2022 enhancement request for the Kansas Firefighting Retention and Safety Grant of $300,000, and not recommending the agency's enhancement request for staff recruitment and retention of $201,523. The subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommendation. Questions on 22? Seeing none, we'll move on to the CPOST, Kansas Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training. The agency requests $866,601, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $263, and it is below the 2021 approved amount. The decrease is attributed to decreased reimbursements of municipalities for law enforcement training, $14,723, resulting from a decrease in revenue to the local law enforcement training reimbursement fund. The decrease is partially offset by an increase expenditures for supplemental requests that include the central registry database improvements of $5,460, investigation data storage $5,400, and the voice over internet protocol phone system to facilitate secure remote work, $3,600. The revised estimate includes 5 FTEs, which is the same, or excuse me, which is a decrease of 2 FTE positions. Governor concurred, and the subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommendations. Questions on 21? Seeing none, move on to 2022. The agency requests $872,816, all from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $6,215 above the fiscal 21 revised estimates. The increase is attributed to an increased expenditures for travel support, an anticipated increase in officer misconduct hearings of $3,546, employer contributions for retirement benefits of $1,655, and an annual office space rental increase of $1,236. The increase is also due to increased expenditures for the agency's enhancement request for storage of investigative data of $1,800 and a VoIP phone system $1,200. The increase is partially offset by a decrease in expenditures related to the 2021 supplemental request for the central registry database improvements of $5,460 that does not reoccur in 2022. The request includes 5 FTE positions. The governor concurred with the recommendations of the agency, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. Senator McGinn.
Thank you. Could somebody, staff, tell us, did the Kansas Commission of Peace Officers apply for any of the CARES money Seems like a few of these items might have been able to be covered by that.
I think you're on mute.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can address that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
So the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Trainings received about $3,600 that was expended in FY 2020. They received about $3,600 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And they essentially used those funds to purchase a few laptop computers to facilitate remote work and to purchase some sanitizing supplies for the office. But that was the limit of the coronavirus relief funds that they were allocated.
It seems like the VoIP phone system might have been able to be included, but maybe not. I guess I'm still trying to understand laptops too, but.
Mr. Chairman, I would say the VoIP phone system was a replacement project that they had planned prior to the pandemic. It's related to a phone system that was there when they moved into the facility in 2016, so they had planned to replace that system. That doesn't mean that it couldn't have potentially been eligible for some coronavirus relief funding, but this was the amount that they were allocated from that fund.
Just a follow-up, I forgot, where did they move in 2016?
They moved, the facility moved into the Wichita, the office space in Wichita. I think they were previously housed in Hutchinson with the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. And that was in 2006, I apologize.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a question for staff. I noticed in 21, they talked about not reporting the part-time positions that didn't get benefits. And I'm assuming they're still using some temporary part-time people. And so my question is kind of in two parts. Is that the case? And then secondly, it looks like on several of these reports, we're not reporting positions with the shrinkage that we have in the past, that I never completely understood the shrinkage dilemma. Is that an accurate thing, and does somebody on staff want to try to educate me on that issue about just how we're dealing with personnel in general?
Earl, would you mind answering that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can address that. So the question about the 2 FTE positions, so the agency is decreasing by 2 FTE positions. Those 2 positions are actually 4 temporary positions. So those are usually filled by retired investigative officers who don't require or don't request the benefits. So those positions have traditionally been budgeted with benefits. However, they're requesting to adjust that so that those positions would reflect non-benefits eligible status. So positions still exist and they will continue to exist. They just accurately reflect that these are part-time temporary positions. And then the second question related to shrinkage. This agency does not have shrinkage. It is a fee or a special revenue funded agency, so they draw their revenue from 2 funds that are that draw revenue from docket fees. So they don't receive any SGF funds. So there's not a shrinkage rate applied for this agency.
Thank you. Appreciate that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I would make a motion that we approve the Emergency Medical Service Board Subcommittee report, the State Fire Marshal's report, and the C-Post report. Second by Senator Hawk. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the general government. First one we have is the Attorney General's. The agency requested a revised estimate of $26.9 million, including $7.1 from SGF. This is an all funds increase of $264,816, and an SGF increase of $249,818 above the 21 approved amount. The SGF increase is attributed to the agency's supplemental request for the Victim Service Division to develop a mobile phone application to communicate with youth for the purpose of preventing suicide. Absent the supplemental request, the agency request estimates 26.6, including $7 million from SGF. This is an all-funds increase of $14,988 and an SGF decrease of $182. The revised estimate includes 173.3 FTE positions, which is an increase of 0.2 FTE positions. The governor recommended expenditures of $26.7 million, including $6.8 from SGF. This is an all-funds decrease of $165,148 and an SGF decrease of $300,000, below the agency's revised estimates. The decrease is attributed to reducing the use of SGF monies and increasing the use of the agency fee funds. The governor does not recommend the agency's victim service supplemental request. This accounted for a total of $250,000, all SGF. The request would have provided funding for the Victim Service Division to develop the mobile phone application to communicate with youth for the purpose of preventing youth suicide. The governor concurs with the agency request of 173.3 FTE positions. The subcommittee concurred with the governor's recommended, except that the subcommittee recommended that we go ahead and transfer the $463,593 from the Kansas Endowment for Youth Key Fund to the Tobacco Master Settlement Compensation Agreement Fund for fiscal year 21. Questions on 21? Senator McGinn.
I have two questions. First question is, not sure why the Attorney General, well, or if he's coordinating with the suicide prevention programs that we have locally. Our counties have those hotlines. Seems like, to me, it'd be confusing if the AG's office has a hotline and then the counties have a hotline. It seems to me that we should be coordinating those services with local government.
When we asked that question to the Attorney General, they had assured the committee that this was a separate program and wouldn't interfere with existing programs.
Just trying to understand if I have a child in crisis, you know, I don't know what the numbers are, 311, whatever. They should all be, I think, coordinated. So I guess I'll ask the Attorney General's office about more information on that. And my second question is, I guess I'm missing it somewhere. Why are we moving the Keys tobacco money into the Keys program? Is that to fund this program, or is there, what is the program we're funding?
It is for funding the suicide program. It's money out of the
Oh, so it's going to be
tobacco
$463,000
yes.
to fund a program. Anyway, I think this is very confusing. Is somebody on, may I ask if somebody's on WebEx to explain how they're going to coordinate with the local units of government that have suicide prevention programs?
Is there anyone on from the Secretary of State's office?
Well, Attorney General.
Or Attorney General, I mean, excuse me.
Yes, Eric Montgomery, Chief of Staff. Can you hear me?
Yes, Eric.
Senator McGinn, as you may remember, this program was codified in the Attorney General's office in the passage of legislation in 2019. And it's now 75-772. So the details laid out are there. One of those things is to have an advisory board for this program. And that advisory board is seeking input from all over the state, including the locals. So I think I could go into that. That's about all the level of detail I can go into right now without Gina being on the call, Gina Meyer-Hummel, who's the Youth Suicide Prevention Coordinator. But I would be happy to answer any additional questions you might have in more detail.
Senator McGinn?
Thank you, and I appreciate your sharing that codification that occurred in 2019. I do remember that. So is the $463,000 to pay for this advisory committee?
No, it's actually to, and unfortunately, I don't know how much I can share. I can just share we are in the middle of the RFP process. So the timing is unfortunate that we don't have an exact dollar figure to bring to the committee. What we suggested in subcommittee is allowing proviso language to be added to both 21 and 22 that would allow us to expend money from the tobacco fund to pay for this and give us maximum flexibility as well.
Senator McGinn?
I would appreciate Gina Meyer following up with me, please.
Okay, will do.
Senator Kirshen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other day when we discussed that 460,000 transferred, but 250,000 was supposed to be allocated to the suicide prevention. That's what the original program cost was, but they never funded it. So 250 was earmarked for, that's the way I understood it. The 460 that would be transferred.
Right, it's part of the, part of the 460 was the 250. Yep.
Can I ask Senator a question?
Senator McGinn?
Just, so is that for the prevention program, or how much is for the hotline? How much is for the prevention program?
I don't know the breakdown.
Oh, okay.
But
So thank you. And I'll just go back to, if Gina gets back with me, I really want to know how they're coordinating with the local units of government. Thank you.
Senator Petty?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. If Senator Petty was speaking, we couldn't hear it on WebEx.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. That was my fault. And I'm not even on the WebNext. I did have a concern, I did have a little bit of a non-understanding about how we got to the figure of the 468 amount as opposed, I'm sorry, 463 amount as opposed to the 250. I will say I did do a little research into, because I did ask the question about this hotline and how that would be different from the National Victim Prevention Lifeline, and it's the 988 number that KDADS did get a grant to develop. I did find out that there is coordination between that this group, that they have that she sets on their board. But also yesterday, so it's going to be interesting as you have this RFP that's out, but yesterday the information that you shared with me was that the comment was made, well, teens don't use the phone. So I'm going to assume that the program that's going to be developed or with these funds through the Attorney General's office is going to be less tied to a phone number because that was interesting that that was said, and then today I'm looking at a hotline, and the comment was made, well, they don't use the phone, so they wouldn't be using the 988 number. I really think that a common number is going to be to our best advantage when it comes to a suicide hotline, and I would agree with Senator McGinn. I don't want to see any confusion about a conflict, but I do know that she does sit on the board of this Project Lifeline too.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm confused about the $250,000 for the youth suicide, and then the 463, and I'm a little bit confused about, or maybe a lot, about that money going from the Keys Fund to the Tobacco Master Settlement Fund. Now, if that fund's in the Attorney General office, then I understand that, but is that Tobacco Master Settlement Compensation Agreement Fund in the Attorney General's office?
Eric, can you speak to that, please?
Yes, that fund is located in the Attorney General's office. That transfer happens routinely and has for nearly every year in the Attorney General's office. It comes off the top of the tobacco, the tens of millions of dollars that come in every year from the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. And this is a, that transfer pays for the compliance aspects for our attorney and two analysts to help with the terms of the Master Settlement Agreement. So that it's not taking away from anyone, it's just restoring something that had been normally happening routinely.
And so that wasn't transferred in 2020 from the Keys Fund to the Master Settlement Fund?
In 2020, that transfer did happen, yes.
Was it for roughly that same amount, that 463,000?
Yes, roughly.
And then by implication on this, is the assumption that since I'm looking at the governor's recommendation not to transfer 250,000 SGF, is the assumption that 250,000 for the youth suicide will be funded out of that Keys transfer, or is that not even connected to that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the proviso language that we're asking for. Yes.
That it would be funded out of that Keys fund?
Out of the transfer from the Keys fund.
To that? Okay.
Not additionally, not on top of, just allowing us to use the transfer that happens every year.
Gotcha. And so what have you been funding with that transfer that now if you put that money into the youth suicide, you won't be able to fund?
Nothing, because we've been able to, over the last few years, run that program very frugally. So we do have a bit of flexibility in that funding of that, in that fund balance currently.
Good. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know if you look under governor's recommendation, there's a sentence in there that says the decrease is attributed to reducing the use of SGF funds and increasing the use of agency fee funds. The thing that caught my ear the other day was that we don't want the Attorney General sitting down trying to make decisions on cases that he's going to make money on, that he's there doing cases that pertain to doing the right thing. And that as we keep doing that kind of thing, we're okay today, but we're headed the wrong direction in the future. So that's kind of was the conversation of my understanding. They might confirm that or what the conversation was there.
Eric.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, Eric Montgomery, just to be clear, we are now talking about the SGF reduction, the 10%, 650,000 approximate SGF reduction, not anything we've talked about previously. So the Attorney General in his testimony mentioned the fact that, you know, even though you know, in the Capitol building, in these budget committees, the court cost fund is called a fee fund because it is 2000 series fund, but in reality, in our office, it's a litigation recovery fund. So unlike you know, the known factor, we have no idea how much income we will have in that fund each year. So that's why we ask for some flexibility to be able to manage that fund with a higher balance, because we don't know dollar for dollar when those monies are going to come in to fund that. So in order to keep doing what we've always been doing in our core functions of victim services and legal opinions and government counsel, I believe, and some criminal work, we backfilled that SGF reduction with the court cost fund. So that's the AG said in his testimony that we could manage through this year, but we are unable to predict in the out years how much exact money we'll be able to recover through litigation. So that's why we simply mentioned that in our testimony.
In fact, okay. Senator Petty.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious as to if we need to add language to the Senate subcommittee recommendation that speaks to the 250,000 coming out of the 463,583 that was coming from the KEYS fund. We've just heard from staff, from the AG staff, that the 250 would be coming from that, but actually our language doesn't specify that.
Thank you. Gabrielle, this is yours, correct?
Yes, sir. So
Should
we would
we add
need,
some separate language for the 250 coming out of the tobacco for the youth suicide? Do we need to
So-
specifically do that?
for the subcommittee report, we would require proviso language to permit that. So we would need to clarify that the subcommittee recommends adding proviso language, and you can certainly provide that extra detail that the subcommittee is recommending that portion be used for that purpose.
Okay, and Senator Petty is recommending that, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm recommending that that 250, that it reflect that the 250 that was requested is coming out of this, or is a portion of this 463,593.
You have that, Gabrielle?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we have that motion, and second by Senator Hawk. Okay, discussion, Senator Hawk.
Just wondering if you want to make that specific 250. I think I heard Eric say that they're in the middle of an RFP process that might change that amount. Do we want to, I guess I'd ask Eric, do you need more flexibility, or is that a problem specifying that exact amount?
Eric?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Senator Hawk, you are correct. You hit the nail on the head. We are in the middle of that. So I don't know, you know, in the budget process, we were asked to come up with a figure at the very beginning. This is, of course, back in August when we were trying to, you know, put an idea. So we had to put something in to ask for. That might be somewhat limiting to specify it to an exact dollar figure. So that's why we worked with Jill Walters to provide that proviso language that was presented to the subcommittee the other day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be helpful to just say add the proviso language for approximately 250,000, so there might be, when it gets down to writing the proviso language, we could have whatever, less or more, depending on what the RFPs say.
Gabrielle, would that be sufficient if we use the language and then have a variance there on the amount?
We could do that. We could put up to the amount or about the amount of 250,000. Or we could refer to the drafted proviso language that said that they proposed proviso language that they could make expenditures out of that fund for that purpose. So whichever you're most comfortable with, Mr. Chair.
I think we'll just use the language. Yeah. Senator Petty, you want to make a motion on doing that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Gabrielle, I would agree with the language of expenditures out of this 463,593 funds for the victim service request.
Okay, and we have a second, Senator Hawk. Gabrielle, are we all on the same page?
Yeah, so just to clarify, we will use the existing language in the subcommittee report and add that the committee recommends including proviso language to make expenditures out of the fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on 2021?
Are we going to do that by consensus or vote? Because I have another question.
Okay. We will, just one second. Questions, Senator McGinn.
And it's not on the amendment,
Okay,
so I have
okay.
just another quick one.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote on that then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Senator McGinn had a question?
Research give us the list of the KEYS fund and the distributions so that, and also so we can see the balance. So I'd like to have an update on that.
Yeah, I can send that over after the meeting, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Okay, we'll move on to 2022. The agency requests $26.3 million, including $6.6 from the State General Fund. It's an all funds decrease of $524,152, or 2% below the fiscal year 21. The decrease of $596,355 below the 21 estimate is the primary reason for the decrease is the reapportion of the funding for fiscal year 20 and 20 into the fiscal year 21 that does not reoccur in 2022. The agency requests 50,000 SGF for fiscal year 22. Enhancement request. The agency requests an enhancement for computer maintenance service, costs related to the Youth Suicide Prevention website and a phone application within the Victim Service Division. Absent the enhancement request, the agency requests a revised estimate of $26.3 million, including $6.5 from SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $646,355 and an SGF decrease of $574,192 from the fiscal 21 revised estimates. This includes 173.3 FTEs. The governor recommends expenditures $26.2 million, including $5.9 from SGF. It's an all funds decrease of $122,200 and an SGF decrease of $700,296 below the agency's request. The decrease is primarily attributed to the acceptance of the agency's reduced resource budgets, which includes a decrease of $650,296, all from SGF, with most of the reduction replaced with agency fee funds. Additionally, the governor does not recommend the agency's victim service enhancement request in the amount of $50,000 for SGF. The request would have provided funding for maintenance costs related to the Youth Suicide Prevention website and a phone application within the Victim Service Division. The subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2022 with the following adjustments and recommendations: transferring the $463,593 from the Kansas Endowment Youth Fund to the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement Fund for fiscal year 2022. The subcommittee recommends the full Senate Ways and Means Committee review the agency's reduced resources for fiscal 2022. Questions on 2022? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we need the same proviso language in 2022, or did it take care of it in 2021?
Gabrielle?
We would need to add that same proviso language.
I would so move.
We have a motion. We have a second. Senator Petty? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the Secretary of State. The agency oops, sorry. Okay. We did the other stuff. Okay. Okay, we'll wait to move the Attorney Generals with the Secretary of State. We'll do them together, so. Okay, on the Secretary of State's, the agency requests a revised estimate of $9.1 million in fiscal year 21, all from special revenue funds. This is an all funds increase of $2.7 million above the fiscal 21 approved budget. The increase is all from the Federal Help America Vote Act, funds provided by the Federal Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security CARES Act, and is transferred to the local units of government. The governor concurs with the agency's estimates for 2021, and the subcommittee agreed with the governor's recommendation for 2021. Questions on 21? Seeing none, we'll move on to 2022. The agency requests $6.9 million for fiscal year 2022, including $927,585 from the State General Fund. This is an all funds decrease of $2.3 million below fiscal year 21's revised estimates. The decrease is attributed to a one-time expenditure made in 2021 for the HAVA CARES Act that does not repeat in fiscal year 2022. The $927,585 SGF increase is attributed to a required state match to release the federal HAVA funds. State matched funds are transferred from SGF to the agency's Democracy Fund. The governor concurs with the agency's funding request for 2022. The governor recommends $927,585 as a direct SGF transfer to Democracy Fund instead of an SGF appropriations to meet the state match required by the HAVA Election Security Grant and HAV CARES Act. The subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022 with the following adjustments. Delete the transfer of $924,500 from SGF to the Democracy Fund for the state match requirements of the HAVA CARES Act for fiscal year 22. The Secretary of State has indicated that the HAVA CARES Act state match requirements can be met with existing special revenue funds. So that would leave the $3,085 transferred to the Democracy Fund. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a detailed question. I see the governor's recommendation is $927,585, but in the subcommittee report, it's only $924,500. Did it turn out we didn't need quite as much money as the agency was saying?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. They only needed $3,085, which was on a separate sheet.
So we saved some money.
Yes, we didn't need it, because, so, yep, it was already taken care of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Seeing none, I have to make a motion that we approve the Attorney General and Secretary of State's budgets. Second by Senator Kirshen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to governmental, and Senator Clays will report back to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start out with the Legislative Coordinating Council. I'm going to do 21 and 22, and then stand for questions on each, and then make a motion at the end of all of these. None of these had any subcommittee changes from the governor's recommendation. They are all concurring with the governor's recommendation throughout. We'll start out with the agency estimate for 2021, expenditures of $19.7 million, all from SGF. That includes $19 million that's remaining in the coronavirus relief money that was appropriated in 2020 and reappropriated into 21. The majority of those remaining expenditures are in salaries and wages for 8 FTEs, which is the same as the approved number. Largely, that's legislative administrative services. The governor recommended 3.1 million SGF. It's a reduction of 16.7 million. That is a lapse of the 16.7 in coronavirus response for SGF in 2021. The 3.1 million remaining, because you'll check 2022 and see it drops all the way to 757, which is really the base salaries and wages. That is for a couple of requests that are still outstanding for LCC to approve. I believe one involves the state fair, and then the other one slips my mind, but I'm sure we can have staff answer if you have more questions on that. And then moving to 2022, as I mentioned, it goes back down to the normal range for this agency, 757,000 all SGF. That's the decrease of the 19 million that was appropriated for coronavirus relief response. The governor did concur with the 2022 request as well, and the subcommittee concurred with the governor, as I mentioned previously. And with that, I will stand for questions on the FY21 and 22 budget for the Legislative Coordinating Council.
Any questions, Senator Hawk?
Just to clarify, that coronavirus relief money was a state general fund money that roughly we put 50 million in the budget for that. That's
Correct.
Not CARES money.
No, that's SGF.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Seeing none, please.
All right, seeing none, we will move to the Legislature FY21 and 22 budgets. The agency estimates a revised 26.9 million in SGF. It's the same as the approved amount. Amounts have been adjusted to reflect current expenditure patterns because legislative salaries are budgeted per day, and of course, how many days is up in the air at times. Also includes legislator subsistence and the amount of paid legislative days. We include 48 FTEs, which is the same as the FY 2021 approved. The governor recommended 32 million. That is an increase of 5.1 million, and that 18.8% is all from federal funds above the agency's 2021 revised. That increase is attributable to funds awarded by the Strengthening People and Revitalizing Kansas, or SPARK Task Force, and approved by the State Finance Council for the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund's Virtual State House project, which you can see up on the screens right now. The subcommittee concurred with the governor's 2021, and I'll move to 2022 before standing for questions on the legislature. The agency is requesting 23.7 million. It's 3.2 million less than 21. The majority is that one-time expenditure for the virtual state house that won't reoccur in 2022. This includes the addition of 2 FTEs for KLOIS associated with the virtual state house project, as well as some annual maintenance costs with that project. That is why it is not a complete zeroing out of that number. The governor concurred with the agency's 2022 request, and the subcommittee concurred with the governor, and I will stand for questions on the legislature's budget for 21 and 22.
Seeing none, please proceed.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the Legislative Division of Post Audit. And oh my, what happened here? 2021 is on the opposing page, and then 2022 is behind it. So we'll start with 2021. The agency estimates revised expenditures for 21 of 3.3 million, all from SGF. It's a decrease of about $25,000. That's contractual service expenditures included 150,000 contingency for hiring some outside contractors for economic development tax incentives, evaluation, and some performance audits. The revised estimate includes 26 FTEs. It's the same as the 21 approved, and the governor concurred. The subcommittee concurred with that. We'll move on to 2022, which is actually to the left. The agency requested 3.4 million, all SGF. It's $20,000 above the 2021 revised. Some basic expenditures are adjusted to reflect the revised FY 2021 pattern and changes to salaries and wages, fringe benefits. One of the major contractual service expenditures is contracts for assistance with selected performance audits and evaluations of those economic development tax incentives. And then one item of increase is building space rental. The FTEs stand at 26. The governor concurred, the subcommittee concurred with that. And with that, I will stand for questions on the FY 21 and 22 Legislative Division of Post-Audit Budget.
Questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
All right, let's move to the Legislative Research Department. For FY 2021, the agency estimates a revised budget of 4.6 million in SGF, which is a decrease of about 167,000 below the approved. That adjustment reflects current expenditure patterns. The revised budget reflects increases necessary to implement the constitutional requirement to redraw districts for the House of Representatives, Senate, State Board of Education, and Congress based on the new census. The redistricting expenditures include 3 temporary staff as well as equipment and supplies. The other major adjustment is in professional fees and reflects additional expenditures for professional development and training, as many staff are new, and some database upgrades and website improvements. In addition, there's a lapse of 167,000 for operations expenditures that are not anticipated. The total FTE is 40 positions. That is the same as the 21 approved. The governor concurred with that estimate. The subcommittee concurred with the governor. We'll move on to 2022 for legislative research. Agency requesting 4.5 million. That's about $53,000 below the revised. The request continues the funding at a lower rate for the process to redraw the districts for reapportionment. The request includes the 40 FTE positions, same as 2021. Governor concurred with the agency. Subcommittee concurred with that. And with that, I will stand for questions on Legislative Research Department for 21 and 22.
Any questions? Seeing none, please proceed.
All right, Office of the Reviser of Statutes. The agency estimated a budget of 4.2 million in SGF. That's a decrease of about $384,000. Those were adjusted to reflect some current expenditure patterns. The decrease is due to the not publishing hardbound volumes of the Kansas statutes annotated. That was included in the approved amount. There are 31.5 FTEs. That's the same as the 2021 approved. And the governor concurred with that. The subcommittee concurred with the governor. We'll move on to 2022 for the reviser of statutes. They're asking for 4.2 million. That's an increase of about $16,000. That's adjusted based on the expenditure patterns that they're seeing, and also funding for publication of volumes 3, 3A, and 3B of the Kansas statutes annotated. They'll go back to printing some of those. The majority of the increase is attributable to increases in salaries, wages, and fringe benefits. The total number of positions, 31.5 again. Governor concurred. The subcommittee concurred with the governor, and I will stand for questions on the Office of Reviser of Statutes for 21 and 22.
Any questions? Senator Kirshen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the situation? Are we staffed fully there? Or are we short in that legislative research? Reviser of statutes.
I evidently left that on. The Office of the Reviser of Statutes doesn't show a decrease over the previous, the 31.5. I can ask staff because I don't have that in front of me. Are we seeing any difference from 19 and 20 staff? I think that's Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the question is if there are currently vacancies in the revisor of statutes office, I would have to defer to the revisor self, who is, I believe, on this call.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Gordon Self. Yes, we are fully staffed at the 31 and a half positions.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my reports, but I do have one other item that I wanted to bring up. We're starting to see in budget committees the governor's recommendation for salary and wage adjustments, and to prevent those coming back inconsistent, I think it would be wise for us to make a single global motion that those items will be moved to omnibus for consideration, as opposed to potentially having some committees reporting back raises and some not. We can just make that decision here and then allow the subcommittees to kind of skip that part of it. So I brought the KDOT budget because we saw that one today on page 21. It has the governor's recommended salary and wage adjustments. So my motion would be simply to set aside all governor's recommended salary and wage adjustment items for omnibus consideration.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Senator Petty?
I'm just asking a procedural question. Did we ever approve this before we went on to this?
No, we haven't yet.
Okay, so we're doing this all together?
No, we're
Okay.
doing this first.
I just had the mic.
I saw that part.
Other discussion or questions? Seeing none, you make your motion.
I'll move my motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Motion's carried.
And now I will make a motion regarding the Legislative Coordinating Council, the Legislature, or I'm sorry, I will make a motion to approve the subcommittee recommendations for the Legislative Coordinating Council, the Legislature, Legislative Division of Post Audit, Legislative Research Department, and the Office of the Reviser of Statutes budgets for FY 21 and 22 as presented.
We have a motion. Second by Senator Erickson. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I think that is all we had for today. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.